Hello. Now, first of all, Wagwan Formula One fans, and welcome to another video on this channel. Now, have you ever wondered what Formula One is really like behind the TV screens? And have you ever really wondered what TV screens don't really show you, what Drive to Survive doesn't show you, and what you really wouldn't know unless you know somebody from the inside of the sport? I'm Dave, and I work in Formula One, and in this video, I'm going to share some of those things with you. So, here are the most commonly asked questions that I normally get. I'm going to answer them in this video. And also, by the way, if you have any interesting questions or something that you wonder about, what is it really like behind the scenes? Let me know in the comments below. It'd be great to interact with you as well. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see some more Formula One content. I'm going to have a wide variety of other topics to discuss, obviously, on this channel as well. And by the way, let me know what you think about the McLaren disqualification from the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I think it's very spicy. It's very interesting. By the way, here's my sheet of questions. I'm working old school, by the way. I ain't got this second phone on the background or whatever. So we're going to jump straight into the first questions. Does money really buy performance in Formula One? And I'm going to answer that very simply and quickly for you here. No, it does not. And not only because of the budget caps obviously introduced and the fact that we have to work on tight budgets and every team essentially can only spend the same amount, but some of the teams who've been in the sport for decades and decades and decades longer than others already have their facilities, their people pool, and also what they're able to do with their access in the sport and with their big brand. It's a lot bigger than, for example, compare, I don't know, let's go for McLaren, right, and Haas. They're able to spend the same amount of money, but as you can imagine, McLaren facilities and the amount of billions that's been invested into that since, you know, the team was created, realistically. So as you can imagine, these Formula One teams, they also are multi-billion-pound businesses, all right? And not only do they have to race, they also have to market and they also have to work with brands, all right? Because that's what it's all about, essentially, at the end of the day. As much as we love this sport, Formula One, it is also a money-making machine, right? So some teams, the attitudes of the people and the attitudes of the company and where the direction they're heading, some are a little bit more serious about winning and competing and getting to the top of that grid. And some are just about, or a little bit more so, interested in the marketing and branding side of things. And that makes any sense. Hopefully that answers some of your question. And anyway, we're going to move on to the next question. Whoa, this is a spicy question which I've got for you. How toxic are the relationships inside Formula One teams? And very interesting, and I've got an interesting way to answer this question of yours. Now, again, this is all team to team dependent, depending on where on the grid they are, how well they're getting on with their 5-year plan, for example, and how high up in the hierarchy of the Formula One team you are. Also, it depends what team essentially you work for. Some teams are a little bit more inside competitive than others. There's certain teams which have a little bit more of every man for themselves kind of attitude on certain levels, okay, at least from what I observe. And there's other teams which have a lot more of this team atmosphere where people will be more willing to help one another out and lend them their tools or whatever, okay, when you're working with some of these people. And you can really feel that when you're walking around the corridors of these Formula One teams and, you know, people saying hi to each other, people greeting one another. In other teams, not so much. So hopefully that answers your question in a weird sort of roundabout way, but it depends what sort of level in the hierarchy of a Formula One team you are, whether you work hands-on on the cars, whether you work, for example, in design or in aero, and exactly also what team you're working for, all right? But look, bit of a change of angle. That's a football pitch that I normally play football on, all right? So yeah, shout out to whoever maintains that. Now, straight on to the next question. What are the most common nationalities of the people working in Formula One teams? Now, I'll answer that to an aspect of there's a wide variety, obviously, of nationalities, okay? The most commonly, obviously, because of most Formula One teams being based in the UK, obviously, well, 8 out of 10 Formula One teams are now based in the UK with the introduction of Cadillac as well. So most of the people obviously are Brits. You know, we've got Scots, we've got Irish working in Formula One as well. A lot of English people, obviously. Shout out to all of you, by the way. But I would also say people like myself, there's a lot of Eastern Europeans, or shall I say Central Europeans, because a lot of Eastern Europeans will not like me saying that, okay? Because I've made some historic videos about Slovakia, Czech Republic, and the countries that I'm from, essentially. And I've really got told off for saying Eastern Europe way too much time. But yes, there are some Central European countries as well. Slovakians, Czechs, Poles, quite a lot of Poles, Hungarians that I've worked alongside, as well as there's a lot of like Latin-speaking people in Formula One world. So Latin-speaking countries. Okay, so we've got obviously Italians, we've got French, we've got, you know, Spanish, Portuguese, but there also is South Americans, because you've got to remember, Formula One is the upper echelon, okay, of motorsport. And essentially it's running alongside things like NASA in aerospace and things like that, where people really, if you want to be working peak of the peak, you want to be in Formula One. And I completely understand that, because it comes with a lot of perks, as well as it's just exciting, isn't it? You know, when you actually feel a part of the team and you go to work every morning and you actually feel like, you know what, this is cool, I belong here, I'm valued and appreciated, I'm well compensated, I'm comfortable enough, and I'm working on something that actually at least is interesting. Now let's start a discussion in the comments below if you are from a different Formula One team. And shout out to you, by the way. Thank you very much for watching. I've heard that the word of these videos is spread across the industry, which is lovely. I appreciate that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's nice to have this sort of community as well. I think it'd be great, right? Like, I think in the summer, if we can organise some sort of like a football event or something like that, something like some sort of a sports event, I think that'd be quite cool. Get all the like composite laminators, trimmers from different Formula One teams to play together, maybe on that pitch right there, okay? I can see it in your eyes, I can see it in your smile, I'm gonna have to put my hood up. Now this is a very, very interesting question. Who decides which Formula One driver a team signs? And is it all about talent? No, it is not, and let me answer that. A lot of that, as you would imagine, a lot of Formula One drivers are actually paid drivers, and not as in they're paying for their seat right now, because they're more than talented enough to, you know, get the team to pay for all their seat and their car at this level they're at. But imagine getting into Formula One team, it's something ridiculous. Like, you have to literally be a millionaire, and it's no longer just about talent. You have to have the brands, markets, and funding behind you, okay? So when you're a young rookie driver in Formula One, for example, or if you want to be a young rookie driver aspiring for Formula One, you would start on go-kart level. The go-karting itself can sometimes go up to like 50 grand a year for a seat in your own go-kart, for tyres, for a team to work around a go-kart, and that's just the go-karting level, you know? It's something unbelievable. I think I've watched a video on it, added up all together. If you want to be a Formula One driver, you need something like 1.5 million, if not more, in order to even get a shot to be a Formula One driver and get to an F1 level. It's probably a lot more money than that. So in a way, if you imagine, every Formula One driver is a paid driver, because you have to have, you know, deep pockets to even be in the sport. However, I know where this question is aiming at, and the answer is also no. You know, some of the Formula One teams which either could be struggling, could be lower down in the championship, or could get really nice payment packages from certain brands or manufacturers in order to push their driver into that driver's seat that they have in their team. They'll get paid handsomely. So that's something that teams need to take into consideration. Obviously, if there's a massive, you know, brand, country, or a manufacturer behind the driver, then they're able to pay handsomely to the team who will accommodate that driver. Hopefully that answers your question, all right? Whoa, what a question. What a question I got for you guys. What part of the car is the real secret sauce? Now, as you can imagine, with these new ground effect, obviously, running cars, as opposed to the over-the-car aero cars as we had, you know, back in the 2010s, essentially, a lot of the secret sauce would be placed in the floors, okay? Most of these cars, which is general knowledge to be honest, most of these cars are very floor sensitive. So any sort of change to how the air flows underneath the car, how it gets picked up, and how it, you know, deals with dirty air and stuff like that will essentially dictate how much of a downforce the car has around a corner and how much of the air resistance allows them to go as quickly as possible around that corner. So yes, a lot of that would, you know, back in the day, a lot of that, back in the 2010s even, you know, before the ground effect era has changed, it was a lot about actually front wings, rear wings, and how, you know, the front wings would affect the airflow into the cars themselves. But if you look at the front wings of most of the cars now, they're very simple because the floor seems to be the real secret sauce. That's at least what I can evaluate, you know, watching F1 on TV and stuff like that, and hearing all of these analyses. And yeah, hopefully that answered that question. Working in some of the Formula One teams can be a little bit like the 1980s Wall Street, like in films like Wolf of Wall Street and stuff like that. You can interpret that whatever way you want, but that's just a little bit of the source that I wanted to drop in there. Obviously, it's, especially back in the day, it was a lot more like that. Nowadays, a lot less, but obviously that is also team specific, okay? What's the team atmosphere like around the Formula One teams? Is it like, you know, do you walk in and you talk to the people? Do you feel like you're part of the team? Do you feel like you're involved? Is it specific whether you're a contractor or whether you're working for the team itself? And once again, I've worked for multiple Formula One teams, and this is team specific, okay? So depending on which team you're working for, sometimes you can be a contractor and you get treated like a contractor and you have that feeling like you're a bit of an outsider. Some other teams will really go out of their way to make sure that you're appreciated. These videos take me quite a bit of time to make and edit and get through. So if you please could subscribe to the channel and mainly actually engage with the channel, okay? So if you could drop us a comment, because that works better for the algorithm itself and it pushes the videos out to people like you, Formula One fans, who might be interested in watching it and finding out some interesting things behind the scenes, and also my opinions on the sport itself. So what is the most difficult part of Formula One car to make? Hopefully we caught that on camera. Either the floor, or I would actually say the chassis is up there as well. And that's because the chassis is obviously, you have to be really extremely careful about how you're building it, making it as light as possible whilst as safe as possible. So by the way, you're weighing like almost every single part that you put into these cars because you want to make sure it's incredibly light. And a bit of an interesting thing, some teams build these chassis in the different ways than other teams do, and that can really resonate in how heavy the car itself is on track. And no matter what engine you put in that car, if the chassis itself is heavy, then obviously you're losing, you're dropping time, all right? So I would say the chassis. I would say the floor can be, only because of how many processing and steps there are to that. But let's go for chassis, okay? Let's nail it down to one, and let's go for the chassis. And that is simply because of how many people are involved on it, how many steps are involved in it. And also, you know, at the moment, you know, we're building next season's cars for the big regulation change, all right? So nobody really knows how truly different the rules are going to be and how these chassis are going to impact the performances of these cars. And things get changed on almost daily basis, you know. New updates come through, new learnings from the aero and design come through, and we have to obviously implement that day to day. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. For me personally, I would say the chassis, but there are other parts of the car which can be a bit tricky to play with, like the rear wings, for example, which include like sensors and things like that. So listen, I'm gonna get wet, but I don't care anymore, okay? Nonetheless, hopefully guys, you've enjoyed this video. It's absolutely pissing it down out here, all right? I'm gonna say it as it is. Drop a like in the comment section below. Ask me some more questions if you're interested in finding out some interesting things behind the scenes. And also we've got a lot more content coming to this channel with maybe some F1 me review, all right? Maybe some of my opinions on like the current dramas and things going on in the Formula One world. Hopefully guys, you've enjoyed this. Hopefully you've enjoyed seeing me progressively getting wetter and wetter throughout this race and get your mind out of the gutter, not in that way, all right? Listen, I'm gonna moonwalk out of the shot at the end of this video, just like in the previous video. I'm gonna leave you with this beautiful sight, all right? Have a lovely day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.